Productive Dentist Academy Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Everyday Practices Dental Podcast. I'm Regan Robertson, and my co-host, Dr. Chad Johnson, Dr. Maggie Augustyn, and I are on a mission to share the stories of everyday dentists who generate extraordinary results using practical, proven methods you can take into your own dental practice. If you are ready to reclaim your time so you can focus on great patient care without sacrificing yourself along the way, buckle up and listen in.
So I always look to give people a wow experience. Every time someone is in my practice, I want them to leave with a wow experience. Today, someone said, like on vacation, as I mentioned to you on Block Island, someone said, "Oh, I've been there. I like it there." I said, "Oh, I have a list of all the restaurants and places to hike on Block Island." And before I finished the sentence, my dental nurse has printed out a list of 3 pages to hand them as they're walking out. And that was like, did you expect to get that at the periodontist office? I always look for something to give.
Welcome to Everyday Practices Dental Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Chad Johnson, along with my other co-host, Regan Robertson, and my other host, Dr. Maggie Augustyn. So today we have a special guest. Dr. Michael Sonick is a board-certified periodontist and implant surgeon based out of Fairfield, Connecticut, who trained me in dental implants 20 years ago. He has over 35 years experience. He's not only renowned for his patient-centered interdisciplinary approach to treatment, but also for the way that he shares that philosophy with the world. I found him recently on YouTube and was watching some of his stuff on Facebook, and it inspired me to have him on the podcast. Through his YouTube channel and growing social media presence, Dr. Sonick offers a rare look inside what it means to build a practice on empathy, aesthetics, and education. Whether it's guiding a full arch transformation or sharing insights on treating the person, not just the teeth, his message is clear. Dentistry is about connection. So let's welcome to the show, Dr. Michael Sonick. Mike, how you doing?
Good. Thank you, Chad. Good to see you again.
Yes.
You look the same as you did 20 years ago.
Just with a few more grays, and you look amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel good. I'm doing what I love to do.
So what keeps you young? I mean, what's keeping you healthy?
Physically, mentally, spiritually, it's the whole package, and it's the way I treat my patients. It's really connecting with human beings and just sort of being there for them. So I do a lot of things to stay healthy, diet. Well, there are 4 things. There are 4 pillars. It's diet, exercise, sleep, and mindfulness. And of course, then you could add on a few other things to that. One is having a passion for doing what you love. And I'm lucky, as you are, and we all are, to do what we love to do, and connecting with other people. It's all about human connectivity. So my message about practicing dentistry by human connection, that's really important. No matter who you listen to about longevity or health, you look at the blue zones and the people who live in those parts of the world, which I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it seems to be true. When you're living in a community, and I actually live in my community, I practice 200 yards from my high school, so I get to see the people I went to high school with. So I'm still in my natural habitat, and I've gotten too far, and it's sort of really, really nice. So I think all those things are really, really important.
And share with our audience and our co-host here. Tell us about your office. Wasn't it something like 400 years old, the building, and you had it redone and stuff like that? Tell me about it.
Yeah, I was in a small office, and actually, when you came and trained with us, it was relatively new. Well, the office was, but the building's 150 years old. It was a doctor's office at one point, and when I bought it from an older periodontist. He was in his early 80s. It was all chopped up, and I got it in an old building in historical district of Fairfield. And from the outside, it looks like a beautiful home, and you walk inside, it's a very modern facility. As you know, we have a teaching center on the 2nd floor, got 7 operatories. We got a laboratory there. We now have added a photo studio and a videographer up there, so we have a whole bunch of things going. We use it.
I remember it being super clean. You guys were, obsessive, as I try and be, about cleanliness and sterility and keeping things, not that though that's going to excite anyone, but I just, being obsessive compulsive kind of type, I was super impressed with how you kept offices clean, in spite of the fact I've gone to a few offices where that's not the case. They have great education, but it's like, oh man, they're kind of lacking in actually keeping stuff clean. So yeah.
Yeah, we're fastidious. It's a big part of my message because people see Now I talk about, the triad of running a good practice. You have to do good dentistry, right?
Mhm.
But people don't really see me because I'm a good dentist. I am a good dentist, but people really don't know. I mean, they can't tell. I mean, if I'm
Yep.
growing bone back and if there's bone lost down to the third thread, if the tooth is still there or whatever. Also, you have to have great service, but you also have to have nice decor. So decor is a big part of how we run our practice. I happen to love nice decor. Everywhere where I go, I look for it. I'll walk out of a restaurant if it doesn't feel good, but without even knowing anything about the food. I just leave. And actually, I was in Chicago once with my son, and we were there. This was about 15 years ago, and we didn't know where to eat. And we walked in. We're looking for a place. We walk in one restaurant. I opened the door. I got into the vestibule, and I turned around. He goes, "What are you doing?" My son was like 19 at the time. I go, "You don't get that feel?" He goes, "No." I go, "This place is, I can't eat here." He goes, "How do you know that?" I go, "I just know." And people do know that, and I have some stories in my book about that, how people leave certain places because of, what someone looks like. Because people look at everything. Now I mean, you're a fastidious guy. Your hair's neat and clean. You always were like that. I mean, that's just the way you took care of yourself. Not all dentists are,
Mhm.
but can you be great if you're a slob? I don't know. You walk into a doctor's office and they got speckles of blood on their shoes. Are you gonna let them operate on you? So
Yeah.
there's people. It's amazing. I have a number of stories like that in the book, and I have many stories from my life like that where people just will walk out because of what you look like. So in our office, I have on Mondays, I tell everybody that their nails got to look good at the beginning of the week. I cut my nails every Monday morning. I've been doing that for 40 years. First thing I do when I get in the office on Monday after our staff meeting, I cut my nails and go on. Sometimes I forget. I go, "Oh God, they look terrible," but nobody notices except for me.
So
Nick,
can I ask you a question from
yeah.
one guy to another? Let's talk nails for a second. This will be the first podcast show ever about guys
Okay.
talking about nails. Do you ever take a file and bevel the sharp corner?
No, I don't. I can't.
Dad, talk about what kind of file you use.
So I started using my wife's file that wears out over time, and I was like, so I went to the hardware store and I got like a metal file, and so I use a metal file because I was like, this one's going to last the rest of my life. And somehow I've told Maggie this, so she's going to help share my details. But I love beveling the corners so that way they're not sharp, like when you're touching it. So
Can't be sharp. I will cut them. Not in.
how did you end up?
I was on the airplane the other day, and a woman next to me started filing her nails, which I didn't care for. There's
No,
something you should do in public,
no, right.
on the airplane. No.
Right. I'll allow it outside if it's casual, like let's say you're in someone's backyard and they're for some reason feeling comfortable, but not on a plane. Come on. All right. So now, before I let anyone jump into it, because I know Regan is chomping at the bit, but I am just super excited about having you on and talking with you, is tell me, how did you end up deciding to write this book and how's it been received? Like, tell me about the book.
Yeah, I mean, I've been the book. The book sort of wrote itself. I've been practicing like the book since I started in practice.
Mm-hmm.
And when I work, I started practicing. Well, I've had probably 20 jobs before I opened my own private practice. And I opened up a white box. It was 600 square feet. I had no patients. I was a sixth periodontist in a town of 65,000. So there was not a need for another periodontist at that time. And so when I opened up my office, I really wanted to make it perfect. And so I crafted that way. And I worked in the mall to try to make enough money so I can open up my new practice um, because I didn't want to practice in another office in my own state. So I worked in two different states. My office is in Connecticut, but I worked in a mall in New York, in the Galleria in White Plains, and in Holyoke and Ingleside up in Massachusetts. I drove 700 miles a week, worked for 6 days a week just to generate enough cash flow so I can open up my practice at that time.
Wow.
And when I opened it up, I wanted to make it really boutiquey and very nice. And we didn't take insurance. I never took insurance. And my growth was slow. My first year in practice, I produced 35,000. My overhead was about 100. And I had $400,000 in debt. This is 1985. So it wasn't, everyone thinks like I'm an overnight success, but it took me a long time to get there. I worked really hard. And so all the principles that I built the practice with, I sort of put into the book. And when I was in the mall, working in the mall, I used to bring in my own stuff. I bring in cassette players. This was before streaming music, and I'd have a Walkman, and I'd have my patients. I would give them a choice of 20 different cassette tapes. I'd have Willie Nelson, I'd have the Beatles, I'd have some jazz, I had classical music, Brahms, whatever they like. And I would give them music. I brought in eyeglasses that were dark, so they would be darkened out. I brought in like a little blankets for them. And because the mall was sort of disgusting, I carried my own artwork in and hung it while I was working there. And the mall was so bad that my friend who was working there, Jeff Shapiro, was a very busy practice in New York. And Jeff Shapiro and I, we went in on a weekend and we got all the dental assistants. We paid them when our boss was out of town. We painted the whole office. So we wanted to make it look nice. And that's how I sort of started. So during COVID, I've been talking about this book, and I've been lecturing for 40 years about, clinical dentistry, but I've always wove a little bit of the clinical practice part in because I think that's equally, if not more important, is how we connect with humans. And so when COVID came around, I go, I got nothing to do. I better. People say, when the book coming out? And a good friend of mine, Bob Levine, a well-known periodontist from Philadelphia, kept on saying, I'm talking about your book. He goes, when's it coming out? And I hadn't written it yet. So during COVID, I wrote it then. It took me about a year to write it. I got online every day. I talked it through. I had people record me, and I spent a long time doing it. And then when COVID was over, I renovated my office. We cleaned it all up. We rewrote all our protocols, and I had the book come out. And then when we hit the ground running, when they opened up the door, and we did a lot of cool things during COVID to make it really customer centric. Matter of fact, I mean, our office was you think our office was clean then? We were over the top of COVID. So a lot of people came to our practice. We're the only place that they would go post-COVID because they didn't trust anybody else. And, for COVID, as you remember, I'd be walking in the woods, in the middle of nowhere, and I'd see someone I knew, and they'd jump behind a tree to get away from me. It was scary, And so I learned a lot during that period of time, and then it finally came out. And so then now that the book is out, it's pretty well received. We've sold, I have over 3,000 copies out, which is not bad for a boutique book.
Right.
We have our video series out on YouTube, and I give one keynote a week. One day a week, I'm lecturing on this topic somewhere. Like this is my second podcast this week. I gave a 2-day program last weekend. So it's getting traction, and I'm trying to, my moonshot is to change the way healthcare is delivered. And that's a big moonshot, but I want to get this book into medical and dental schools and every healthcare facility in the country. And because we talked a little earlier, in the age of AI and human misinformation or disinformation, and when we don't know what's true, what's not true, we always do know what is true in terms of a human connection. That's something we feel.
Mm-hmm.
And people really, really need that. They're starved for it. And so our office, we're in the Northeast where people, sometimes don't think is their friendliest. I don't think Connecticut is the friendliest state, but if you come in our office, it is like people are laughing, they're having a good time. They're greeted as friends by first name. And we do a lot of things to make that, to make that happen. And I had a friend of mine who's a neurolinguistic programming coach, and that's sort of the way that we all interact, by the way we look at each other, the way we speak, the tone of our voice, how we move our hands. There's that human interconnection. We even get it on Zoom a little bit. I can see as I'm looking at some of you here, we're starting to get that feeling. He came to my office one day, spent the day with me, and he says to me, this is before I wrote the book. He goes, you're really good at what you do, but you're unconsciously competent, meaning that I'm good at it, but I don't know why I'm doing it. I was a natural at doing it, but I couldn't teach anybody else. So when I wrote the book, I said, I had to look at and had to break down everything I did, just like I do when I teach implants. Like everything is a system. So I have a system for being a good hospitalian, someone who runs a really good, hospitable practice. And there's a technique for it. And in the great restaurants and the great places like the Four Seasons Hotel, when you go in there, they're all pretty much similar. They have a certain way of greeting you that's nice most of the time. It depends that they have in there. Sometimes it's a little bit robotic the way people look at you, and talk to you. But you got to be sort of natural, and that all really comes down to how you hire and who you hire, which is a huge part. So the most important part of my patient experience, of course, is my team. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
what is fascinating about all of this is I would venture to call you a unicorn in dentistry in particular. There are doctors that I have met similar to you But what you're describing from my lens is the brand experience, the
Yep.
actual experience from before they ever met you to, ever even know you exist to after they walk out the door, and then what follows up for that. And I am genuinely curious because, of course, there is natural intuitive nature to be an active listener and to care about the person before they're even sitting in your chair. What is something that you could share, like a story from a time in your life where you had an experience that just blew your mind because there had to have been some seed that was planted at some point that said, wow, I want to be able to replicate this feeling, like this vibe for my patients and for my practice?
Yeah, I don't have an experience that shaped my journey, that started. But my father had a furniture store. I delivered furniture. I had customer experiences there. I just always had it. I was a lifeguard, so I used to take care of people when they get injured. I was a waiter, okay, for many years. I was a bartender. So I was a cocktail piano player. I mean, I did all those type of things with service my whole career, but I've had plenty of experiences that have been amazing. And once you're open to those experiences out there and you're giving back from a place of abundance, they just magically appear. And I mean, I had one. I can share one. This didn't shape me. I was already shaped at this point, but I always like to stay in nice hotels, and I'll stay at a Ritz or a Four Seasons. Oftentimes, I don't have to pay for them because they're being paid for me. But I was once staying at what I thought was the Four Seasons Hotel in Atlanta, and I know Atlanta really well. I went to Emory, and I go there every year. And I went out for lunch. I came back to the hotel, and I went up to the floor, and I was on the eighth floor, and I used my room key, and it's not working. And, I'm a little upset because I'm in a Four Seasons hotel and the room key is not working. So I have a little bit of an attitude, but I'm trying not to show it. So I walk to the front desk. I go, my room key is not working. And the guy picks up the room key and looks at it. He goes, that's because this is for the Four Seasons Hotel and you're staying at the Ritz. So I said, oh, so they looked alike. And so I go, where's that? He goes, it's like down the road 2 miles. I go, I'll walk. He goes, no, well, let us take you down there. He goes, we have a hotel car and let us take you down to the Four Seasons. So I was staying at the Ritz in downtown Atlanta, and they give me their car to take me to the Four Seasons where I'm not staying. Now, I didn't take it because I felt funny doing that. And I just took an Uber. So I could have stayed either one of those hotels. So for the last 9 years, every time I go to Atlanta, which is about 3 or 4 times a year, I always stay in the Four Seasons downtown, the Ritz-Carlton downtown, because of that experience. I like both hotels, but that one, and it's amazing. Now, who does that? I mean, who does that? I'm giving you a gift, and even though it's not in my best interest. And, I have an expression. I go, do you know why they call it the right thing? Because it's the right thing. So when people come to me for advice, I go, just do what's right. I don't care what they're saying. I see it a lot in young couples that get married. They go, well, I'd like to, but, my spouse says I can't and I shouldn't. I go, but isn't the right thing to do this? You always have to make a stand for doing it the right thing. And if you're in the service business, you always want to do the right thing for the people you serve. And I think it's a privilege, true privilege to do what we do. I mean, especially people pay us thousands of dollars for us to open their mouths and cut them. Okay. And then they say, thank you. It's a really, the whole dynamic of the dental experience, the whole customer's journey is bizarre. And if you can make it seem when they write to you, thank you so much for giving me that experience. Thank you so much. I've never had a better dental experience. I just treated a dentist this week, and he called me up. He goes, and he's 75 years old. He goes, in all my years, and this is a guy I used to work with. He goes, in all my years, I have never had such a painless dental or medical experience. And the first time I met him, he didn't like me at all 30 years ago. He couldn't stand me because he thought I was an arrogant jerk, because, my reputation had preceded me. But as you're my patient, I'm always going to be very kind for you there. But I've had so many of those experiences like that. They're always pretty cool. And I really, what you give out there is you usually get back, and if you lead by, what can you do for me, you're never going to be successful. So I have a question, for you all. Can you be successful if you are not in an abundance mindset? Can you be in a scarcity mindset and still be successful? Put yourself first.
Doctor, are you tired of repeating yourself with your team over and over again, and yet you still see treatment walk out the door? If so, you're not alone. The Clinical Calibration Institute, powered by Productive Dentist Academy, is an all-new online platform that unites your team around your philosophy of care, so patients can say yes with confidence and you grow with purpose. Including online curriculum with world-class faculty, monthly live mastermind sessions for each department within your practice, and an online private community, this is your home to grow. Head over to clinicalcalibration.com today to join every member of your team for one very low monthly membership fee. That's clinicalcalibration.com.
I know.
Plenty of people are.
Yeah, most people are. So
In a scarcity mindset,
yeah,
Maggie?
most people are in a scarcity mindset.
Yeah. I think most people come from a scarcity mindset and they punch. It's funny, I just left a Marco Polo about this for our little group, but it comes from a place of egoism.
Mhm.
And we feel so unworthy that we will fight to the death trying to prove that we are worth something. And so we put on this armor, pretending that we are everything, that we are so tremendously arrogant, and we will fight to the death trying. Why are you laughing, Chad?
Because you're right. Keep going.
Oh, we
Trying
agree with you.
trying to fight to the death that we are everything, that we are better than you, right? We will take everything from the people around us. It's a power struggle. It's a dominance thing. It's an ego thing, and all of it comes from the idea of scarcity, where if you just leaned back and surrendered and looked at the beauty of the world, and because I am with you, I talk about human connection. I don't know if you've ever read the book Compassionomics, but if you think about human connection and compassion, think about what we can give to one another instead of what we are there to take from one another. All of a sudden, a whole new world opens up to you, and you no longer have to prove to someone looking at you your worth. We all see what we are to one another. But I would say the majority of people live from a scarcity mindset, and they fight to the death trying to prove who they are and take from one another instead of giving, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does. So here's the opportunity. If you're in an abundance mindset, you have a distinct advantage because most people aren't there. And there's an expression that there's no competition in a niche. So if your niche is to practice integrity and to be an extremely giving practitioner and to always be there for your patient and not nickel and dime them, say, oh, I always look for experience. I always look to give what I call patients. We've named a lot of things that we do in our practice. And one of them is the wow experience. So I always look to give people a wow experience. Every time someone is in my practice, I want them to leave with a wow experience. Today, someone says, like on vacation, as I mentioned to you on Block Island, someone says, oh, I've been there, I like it there. I said, oh, I have a list of all the restaurants and places to hike on Block Island. And before I finish the sentence, my dental nurse has printed out a list of 3 pages to hand them as they're walking out. And that was like, did you expect to get that at the periodontist office? I always look for something to give people. I have a list of all the top restaurants in areas. I have 30 books in my office, multiple copies. So if someone says, I'm trying to lose some weight. Oh, have you read this book? This is about diet. My neck hurts. What about this? And so I have a book on back pain. I have a book on almost everything. Yeah. So I'll always give them a book. And when I run out of them, I order more of them. So I always try to really improve, the quality of my patients' lives. That's our mission statement. I want to improve the quality of my patients' lives.
I have a question for you because you mentioned that one of the challenges of writing this book was really thinking carefully about how you're able to deliver that wow experience and putting it into frameworks and tools that others can apply for themselves. And it's kind of like doing the right thing. When we look at like crafting core values or key characteristics and we say do the right thing, that can mean different things to different people. So leading them and defining it is important. Could you tell us about your process of getting what was in your head out into this book and like an example that's in the book of a framework that you developed that you were able to walk through that process of, okay, I have to really break it down engineering style and map out what it is that I can, that I do so I can teach others?
Yeah, I think a simple one is the initial examination. So 90% of all dentists do their examination in a hygiene room. So this is a big problem for dentists. Patient call up, they say, I want my teeth cleaned. They go, well, we need to do an exam first. No, all I want is a cleaning. So that's a big blockage. And they think this cleaning costs X dollars. You even see people promoting the practices, $199 exam and cleaning and x-rays. And so they get the patients in, and it's sort of like a loss leader, but do they actually get to do all that? So to enter our practice, it's a 1-hour examination. And during that examination process, we do 4 things. So if you're a new patient in my practice, I will tell them, I said, oh, you're here today for your exam. What we're going to do is an examination, and then we're going to do a diagnosis. And I said, the diagnosis that we have for you is going to be the same no matter if I do it or anybody else, or Chad does it, or Regan does it, or Dr. Maggie does it. It's all going to be the same diagnosis. You either have peritonitis or you don't. It's black and white. I said, and then we're going to give you some treatment options, and then we'll talk about treatment. What most doctors do, and it's not just dentists, it's doctors, is they look at their specialty, and what they like to do is go, oh, that's an all on X. Okay, that's a Invisalign case. So that's like whatever it is. So that's a Lanap case. So when they go into what their procedures are. So most doctors talk about patients as procedures. I talked about dentists as being pothole fillers. We look at something to do to get an insurance code to go down. I want to turn that on its head, and I want to look at everybody as a human being. And the way I do that is 4 parts. We do an exam, we do a diagnosis, treatment plans, and treatment. So I've sort of made that out. And that is something else that's with that. So that also people don't really talk about. Now, what I just said to you, exam, diagnosis, treatment plans, and treatment, we taught that in school as periodontists, that's drilled into us. Most periodontists don't think that way. They're like, let's do some implants. They just want to go to that, I don't care about the procedures. So in my book, what I've done is I say, get away from the procedures and get into the diagnosis. Okay. And once you get to diagnosis, you have to do a complete exam to do that. You can't do that in 3 minutes in a hygiene room. So you need to spend some time doing that. It requires x-rays, models, and a bunch of other things that you all know about. So I broke it down like that. When I sit with that patient, then I'm going to tell them, I said, there's a system to this. Because patients are going to say, I just want this fixed. They go, hold on, let me get you the diagnosis. Let me get you your treatment options so that you can make the decision. So then I give it to them. I said, but before we make a decision, there's an order in which we do your treatment. And the first thing we do is we take care of pain. And then I said, are you in any pain? They go, no. I go, then we don't have to do that. So that's off the table. We don't have to take care of your pain. The only time I would treat someone on their initial visit is if they're in pain. I want to relieve their pain. The second thing I do is treat infection, caries, periodontal disease, endodontic problems, tumors, whatever those things. That's the second thing. And the infection has to be treated before I do the third thing, which is functional rehabilitation. That's implants, ortho, crown and bridge. That's all the stuff that we think about as dentistry. And then I work with aesthetics, but the aesthetics is done in conjunction with functional rehabilitation. I just want the front tooth fixed. Can't if you have an infection because it's out of order. And the last thing is maintenance. So I give them these 2 things, the protocols and the sequence of treatment. The sequence of treatment is exam, diagnosis, treatment plans, and treatment. Now the treatment plans I break down into, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you what you can do. And then you make a decision. And the first thing I always tell a patient is you can do nothing. And once you tell a patient they can do nothing, they immediately take ownership because they say, I don't want to do nothing.
Yeah.
But most people don't get that choice. Most people, the doctor comes in and tells them. So I've also broken down the 3 types of doctors there are. There's the paternal doctor that tells a patient what to do. And that doesn't work too much anymore. Then there's the retail doctor, like, these are your options. This is $499. This is $599. This bone graft's $200. This one's $500. This one, and they go, well, I'll do the cheaper. They don't know how to make a decision. And then there's the doctor that's collaborative. And so I want every doctor to be a collaborative doctor, but that requires education. So I broke down that whole process of the exam, and I will, in the first 90 seconds of meeting a patient, if I can see his resistance, I say, here's what we're going to do today. Today, I'm going to do an exam and diagnosis. I said, I will do treatment only if you're in pain. But I said, but I'll give you treatment options, and then you can own the decision-making process. And I'll bring you to a level where you can understand what we're doing so you can make the best decisions for yourself. And by doing that, I get a 90% case acceptance, but I'm not giving them I'm not telling them what to do. I'm giving them options. I never give more than 3 options. The first option is to do nothing. And the second option was to take out the tooth. The third option is to keep the tooth. And then we could say, well, if we keep the tooth, we could do endo, we could do post and core of this. If we take out the tooth, we could do a bridge, we could do an implant, we could do a flipper, or you could just have a space in your mouth. And if you have a space in your mouth, this will happen and this won't happen, or you could just leave it out. So I give them a very logical sequence, which most doctors don't do because they don't spend the time doing it because they don't have that conversation. So that conversation is very powerful. And I break that down in my chapter on how exactly to go ahead and do that. Something else that I've also broken down, because people come in so fearful that when they walk into our office, it is the most fearful thing. That I always say that I'm like a divorce attorney. I get to see people at their worst before I ask them to spend a lot of money. And they're vulnerable. They're really scared. Now I have 5 divorce attorneys as patients, and I use that line with them, and they can relate to it.
Yeah.
Divorce attorneys are the best patients because they're so nice, because they're really good at making people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
They just have great personalities, They're not litigators. They're someone that have to deal with, family dynamic. And when they're vulnerable like that, what do I want to do? We talked about fear before. You were talking about that too, Dr. Maggie. Basically, you were talking about being a scarcity mindset. The scarcity mindset is fearful, okay? When you lose your fear, you're not in scarcity mindset because you know that you have the power to do whatever you need to do. You could take away everything from me, but I could get it back again because I feel that I have the ability to do that. And I think you all feel the same way. So when those patients come in to see me, they are fearful as hell. And I said to them, I congratulate them for walking in the door. And then I immediately say at their initial visit, I'm glad you're here. You were in the right place. That's a declarative sentence that allows patients to say, okay, I made the right decision being here. Good, I'm in the right place. They have no idea. Okay, it's like, it's when you say something, I'm a good athlete. Oh, okay, so you must be a good athlete. I'm good at this. Okay, yeah, come on our team. So when I tell them in the right place, they feel good. And then I tell them 3 things. I never tell them about problems. I only tell them about the solution. If I mention the problem, I immediately link it with the solution. So I do that linkage. And I always tell them before I even tell them about the problem, I said, there's 3 things that I'm going to do for you. I'm going to improve your function. I'm going to improve your health. And if necessary, we'll improve the cosmetics. Because nobody doesn't want to be healthy and nobody doesn't want to look good and have good function. All that is told within about 90 seconds in some manner. And I linked that all with a story about myself. And I started to talk the importance of storytelling because I relate to them as a human being. I don't talk about frications and class 2 occlusions and caries and deep pocketing.
Right.
They don't know, I don't say any of that kind of stuff. I did back in the day. They don't care. They just want to know that they're going to get better. It's just like when I meet my financial advisor. I don't know what he's doing. Yesterday I met with my lawyer to set up my estate planning and something. I go, whatever. Okay, that's fine. Let's do that. I go, he goes, do you have any questions? I go, yeah, you'll answer them. Well, and I'll walk out of here and I won't remember a damn thing. Is this the right thing? He goes, yeah, it's the right thing. Okay, because I trust my guy, because it basically comes down to trust. It comes down to trust. That was a long-winded answer to a
No, Mike, let me say this. I met with my life insurance guy. He really wanted to meet with me. I didn't. And so we sat down. He was late because he was at the Mexican restaurant next to the Buffalo Wild Wings for a while. He finally then comes and meets with me and he says, well, before you leave, because I said, I got to get back. Well, before you leave, I have this book. And he brings out this binder and he says, I want you to look through this. Turn to section 1. He's got them, labeled, and look at section 1. Now, you do a universal this and that. And he starts talking about, there's a gap between, this. And I'm sitting there going, he's talking about stuff that he finds interesting within his industry because he's using. But I was just like, I don't care. And I don't know what he's talking about. And I actually don't care. Like, and it reminds me a lot of what you just said. It's just like we have to remember that when patients are sitting in the chair, if we say, well, your class 2 frication is just like they're thinking, okay, so is that bad or good? I don't know if I care. Regan, you've been lighting up your face. Please tell me what you're thinking.
Well, what Dr. Sonick, you were just describing is, I believe it's called attribute priming. I think that's the neuro-linguistic phase for it. And it is once I learned that particular, it's not a trick. It's just really a great way to frame a conversation. You can do it in all. I mean, it's great with parenting. It's great with clients. It's great with patients. It's phenomenal because it helps set the stage. So when you say, you were in the right place, it plants that in the patient's mind and it helps give them that boost of confidence. So
It's called attribute what?
attribute priming.
Priming.
And I love it. So you set the stage, and then I guess I'm reflecting. I don't know that I have a question for you, Dr. Sonick. I'm just thrilled because to see you flip it over into the link so that you can be relatable with them, you're transferring that kind of hero's journey onto the patient themselves and showing them, I care about you. And you talked a lot about all of your customer service experience, in the past that I think probably helped maybe with this on how to create a really phenomenal experience. Is this something that you do with your team as well? I'm just really curious.
Yeah, of course it is. We have one of my team members, everybody in our office, dental assistant, administrative person, they all have another job. So we have some in our office, administration. She's chief of customer service, chief of hospitality. So she is there. And that hospitality is not just for patients, it's for the team. So if you come to our office, every time I'm in the office, they have lunch. I buy them lunch. We do 2 or 3 celebrations a week. There's always, I didn't know there was an IT day. Okay, there is an IT day. So we have cakes, we put things, and we post all this kind of stuff. We make people feel really special. We give them a 1-year thing, and we give them a 5-year thing. And so, yeah, I celebrate them. I have to rehire my team every day because they're volunteers.
That's
They
profound. I
Yeah.
have to rehire my team every day.
Yeah.
That's
Do-
like recommitting in a marriage every day.
Yeah. Commitment's very big. That's a whole other conversation. I do that with my patients. I make them commit to me at the first visit. I go, I refuse to treat you unless you commit to keeping your teeth clean for the rest of your life by getting your teeth clean every 3 to 6 months, whatever it is. I go, will you give me that commitment? And they go, I'm not sure. I go, then I'm not treating you. So I make that commitment right there. That's something I started doing about 10 years ago. So we have our hygiene practice. We have 3 full-time hygienists 5 days a week. And most people say, I hate their hygienists. I love my hygienists. They're the backbone of our practice. And I tell them every day. I make sure I talk to my team members every day. I walk in, I'm a very quiet guy that does all our instruments. I walk in there, I go, I'm on vacation next week, Jason. I go, I guess we won't have a talk in a week. Now, he doesn't talk to anybody. He's quiet. He sits in the lab. He loves it. He just likes doing that. And I just make sure I connect with everybody. And someone goes through I had one of my team members was going through a difficult time. She was crying. She's telling me what's wrong. I go, okay. And, she's the happiest, most joyful person in our office, but she's having trouble with her children. And she comes the next day, how you doing? She goes, I'm still miserable. I said, you know something? You used to be the most joyful person in the office. I said, now you're the most miserable. And she looks at me, she starts laughing. And then all of a sudden it broke the tension. Another one of my assistants had been to 4 funerals in the last months. And I go, 4? I go, supposed to come in 3s. You're up to 4? I go, what do you have, some sort of black crap? We make light of it and I connect with them. I don't ignore that they're going through something. And so we can really talk about that. Very, very open with my team. We have a team meeting every day, and my door is open. And if they have any problem in the office, I tell them to come to me. I don't want them fighting. I go, if you're fighting when I'm in the office, you come to me. I even have a form for it. It's called the Experience Transformer. What happened? Why did it occur? What's your part in it? That's number 3. What's your part in it?
Yeah.
4 is, what are you going to do so that will never happen again? So they don't want to come to me because they're going to have to become, okay,
The
they're going to
solution.
become proactive. So they are not sitting in, and you'll like this one, Reagan, they're not sitting in the victim's chair. So, okay, you can use that too.
Can you imagine a future if dentistry was looked at as a hospitality business?
Yeah.
I think that is where the future is going. I think that especially with all of the troubles with insurance right now, the state of the world, just AI, all of the pieces together. I full disclosure, listeners, I have not read this book yet, and it is literally in my hands, and I cannot wait to devour this book. It feels to me, Dr. Sonick, like this helps paint a new paradigm and what the future of dentistry can be if we look at it as a hospitality business where we are earning the right to dentistry. And you've got
No,
some
the
better.
book is endorsed. The book is endorsed on the cover. And this is not going to impress any of you, most likely. It's endorsed by Danny Meyer. Okay. It's also been endorsed by, John Coyce and Dennis Tarnow and a lot of famous dentists, but nobody knows famous dentists. And you don't know Danny Meyer. Anyone know Danny Meyer? Okay. Danny Meyer is the most successful restaurateur in the world. He started a restaurant called Union Square Cafe. Same year I opened my practice, and then he opened up Gramercy Tavern in Manhattan, my favorite restaurant, 11 Madison Park, which was the #1 restaurant in the world for 2 years.
Oh, you're kidding. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, and he's famous. Now, here's how you'll know him. Shake Shack. So he's
Oh, yeah.
and he is now a billionaire because of Shake Shack, not because of his restaurants. And he was successful in his restaurants. Maybe dentist successful, but now he's like real successful. And he is the guy that everybody goes to. He wrote a book called Setting the Table.
Yes.
One of his mentees is Will Guidara, who took over 11 Madison Park, and he wrote Unreasonable
Yep.
Hospitality. So those folks are the people that have endorsed the book. And that's where I come from. Bobby Stuckey, who just got the James Beard Award. You know him, Bobby Stuckey?
I am a huge Will Guidara fan, so that's why I'm on the edge
Yep,
of
the
my seat
connection is
right now.
made.
Yeah, I figured it out and went, oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I just sent the book to Will Guidara last week. And Bobby Stuckey, who is the sommelier at French Laundry, which is one of the top restaurants out in California. He has a restaurant in Frasca that was just voted the #1 restaurant in the United States, got the James Beard Award. And I know him very well because my daughter went to Boulder. I used to eat there. And he also gave me an endorsement. And he talks about, we're just serving a really good plate of food. He goes, what, Dr. Sonick does and what doctors do is they're doing something that has to be, they're placing an implant in a 22-year-old that's going to have to last another 60 years. He goes, that's something that have to be taken very seriously. If you can do that with hospitality, that's phenomenon. And I mentioned earlier in my this podcast, the term hospitalian, that came from Bobby Stuckey. That's his term, because he looks at himself and he loves serving food. I mean, here's a guy that doesn't have to anymore. He's got his own jet, but he's on the floor serving food, putting down glasses, pouring wine, making shares coffee. And he has a whole unique process for giving you a great experience there. It's amazing what he does.
So, Mike, this gives people an intro to you. I'm just curious, are you still doing any lecturing at NYU, or do you like guest lecture once a semester occasionally? Like, what's that look like for you right now?
I lecture at least once a week somewhere. I give probably about 40, 50 lectures a year.
Yes.
I lecture at NYU. If you go to my website, which is my name, michaelsonick.com.
With a K on the end of Sonic, just to make sure people know.
Yeah, you'll see all the programs that I do. I lecture for ZimV Institute, the Implant Institute. I do private courses. I just did a 2-day course on soft tissue with Shankar Ear, well-known prosthodontist in Jersey this weekend. I lecture at various meetings, the Academy of Osseointegration, the American Academy of Implant Dentistry, the American Academy of Periodontology. And I do a lot of, webinars. I work for Glidewell. All the companies, pull me in and do some things. And for this lecture here, I come in and, I do a lot of study clubs, so I probably lecture once a week somewhere. I go all over the country. Yeah, and the world, actually. So I'll be in Brazil this year, Taiwan later this year. I used to do a lot more before COVID, not so much. And I'll probably create a series of programs. I have a series of programs online too that you can buy the videos that for $4.99, and you can get 10 lectures with a whole workbook on how to introduce this into your practice. So if you want to introduce this into your practice, buy the book, read the book. At the end of every chapter, there are 3 pages of questions to ask yourself about the concepts.
A little reflection.
Self-analysis, like what kind of decor do I have? Do I give a wow experience? Do I do showtime? Am I talking about myself? Am I into myself? What about insurance? All how do you hire? I have a whole thing on hiring, fire. I have had 0 turnover with 25 employees in over a year, which I'm very proud of. That's like a great statistic, because that's hard, because you have to rehire every day.
Yeah.
And I also have, as I mentioned, YouTube. Every Wednesday, I put out a new YouTube video. They're on my YouTube channel, which is Michael Sonick, and that links to an Instagram. You can find me there. So
I'm really liking those. Thanks for doing those.
Thanks. And then I also do the courses, and I can come in and do in-house training and things like that. So I have a whole bunch of things I do.
Very cool.
Well,
Why do you care so much about people? Where does that come from in you?
I don't know. I don't know.
That's not a fair answer. Come on.
Why do I know it? Because it's the only way that you can become spiritual and get out of yourself. Because if you're just thinking about yourself, it's a miserable life. Okay. So if I'm in a bad mood, I'll give you the 4-part things that I do. If something bothers me. Okay. And by the way, something bothers me 5 or 6 times a day. Okay. Every day. There's always something, and something can be very small, right? It's like, oh, that person just doesn't get it. I've spent so much time, they don't get it, or I missed that bus, or whatever. And or I'm 5 pounds too heavy. I shouldn't have eaten that donut. But whatever it is, or my daughter doesn't appreciate me, something every day is going to bother me. And so what do? I just acknowledge it immediately, and then I sort of get into a place where okay, let's remove this. Some sort of a spiritual spot. Talk to somebody about it. I go, yeah, and they're going to turn to me. Usually my wife is great for this. I'm very happily married. My wife will just turn to me. My wife, Chad. My wife will just turn to me and says, "You're being a baby." I go, "Yeah, you're right." And then I immediately, and this is the true gift, I find somebody else to help. So by helping others, I get completely out of myself. So the true gift, because every day I walk into my office, and I've been doing this ritual for 40 years. I walk into my office and I say to myself, "It's showtime. Let me be the gift today." It's a little ritual that I perform. I open a door and I make believe I'm walking onto a Broadway stage, and it's
Disney.
the show.
Yes.
And it's the show. And the back door is unlocked, and when I open up that door, there's my team is sitting there for our morning meeting, and we start with the morning meeting. And I think about that. And at the end of that morning meeting, we always say, "It's showtime. Let's go." And the whole team, we do a dad joke. We read a stupid joke, and then we have a spiritual. We have like 15 books, spiritual books, dad jokes, stupid things. We read a stupid joke, which is really dumb. Like, I'll tell you one. What is Beethoven's favorite fruit? Banana. So so that sounds, they're really dumb. So that was our joke this week. And then we go out there. So by getting out of myself, it's very selfish. By helping others, it's the most selfish thing I could do, because I feel better. And it always works. And when I have a friend that's going through a divorce right now, and he hates his ex-wife. I go, "It's killing you." I go, "She did this, she did this, she did this." I go, "Okay. So, let it go, man. Pray for her, help her. It's gonna come back." And he won't get that for a few years. He will eventually, but I know he'll get there. But once he gets to that spot, and she's done some very painful things for it, and she's wrong, but he's suffering because she's wrong.
Yeah.
You don't have to. People are gonna do things that are suffering. You look at the news, it is just all negative, and it's negative because we're attracted to negativity. And the reason we're attracted to negativity is because it's a survival instinct. We have to look for danger.
Sure.
It's all day long, boom, boom, boom. So positivity wins. That's why. So I guess I do have a reason why I do it, Maggie.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Michael Sonick, out of Connecticut, I love you and I really appreciate you. I was honored that you said yes to come on today, and it's been way too long, but distance just requires it, I guess. But I think about you often. I want you to know that, and I'm saying it publicly so everyone knows that. I'm just trying to throw you some love that I regularly think of you, and I'm just so thrilled to have you on today. We're glad to have you on and talking about not only your book, but how you've helped mentor a whole generation, particularly up in your area, and with periodontology, with implantology, and around the world as much as you travel. So thank you so much for coming on today.
It's been a pleasure and true honor.
Yeah.
Chad, I remember you as a young boy right out of, I think it was one of your first courses out of dental school.
It was ridiculous. Yeah. So
yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. Well, everyone, thanks for being great listeners on Everyday Practices Dental Podcast today with Regan, Dr. Maggie, Dr. Michael, and myself.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Everyday Practices Podcast. It would mean the world if you can help spread the word by sharing this episode with a fellow dentist and leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. Do you have an extraordinary story you'd like to share or feedback on how we can make this podcast even more awesome? Drop us an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. And don't forget to check out our other podcasts from Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentist.com/podcasts. See you next week.